Welcome aboard the LeftJet Studios guide to making a short film in 8 hours with one person, one camera, one lens, and no internet. Step 1 is concepting. For me, this usually starts with a what if, or an if only I could ... You need to have 3 acts. I know there's different conventions, there's 5-act structures in TV, there's 4-act structures, but at the base, having 3 acts is a great place to start. The first act in this story is the character lying in bed. He's reading a book, he gets a text message from a client saying that they need a file as soon as possible, need it by morning, so he goes and he gets on his computer to send this file, and he hits the catalyst, which is the internet's not working. So this then starts the second act. So he goes into the kitchen area where the wireless router is and the modem's at, and he starts to wrestle with the modem, and he wrestles and he wrestles and he wrestles and he fights it, and he thinks he has victories and he doesn't. And then at the very end of him getting super angry and upset, right at the break of the third act, he finds his solution, and his solution is plugging in to the modem directly with an Ethernet cable. So with that now in his bag, he goes and runs back to get his computer, and then runs back into the kitchen to plug it in and to get internet. You'll have to watch the third act to see how that all plays out. Step 2 is characters. You always want to make your characters interesting. An uninteresting character is boring. Nobody wants to watch somebody do mundane things in a mundane way. Give them an interesting way to do even the dumbest things. For my piece here, I have the character lying in bed, and what I used to do when I was reading in elementary school is I would lay on one side, read the book, and then when I need to change pages, I would flip to the other side and then read the other page. And I'd go back and forth until I went to sleep. So I figured, hey, that's an interesting thing that I can make my character do. Additionally, it's always good to have your character's arc, to send them on a journey, so that they start out a certain way, and then they change over time, or they learn a lesson, or they end up somewhere because of what they've done. So in this short, I take a character who's perfectly normal, perfectly happy, he's reading his book, the internet stops working, he needs to get it working, and then he gets angry. Conflict is very important. You need to be able to have 2 characters, or 2 man versus nature, man versus man versus self, where there are 2 opposing forces and they have to fight it out in order to figure it out. This should take place in any short, any scene, anything you make. Even if it's as simple as somebody going into a coffee shop to order a coffee, have them want something and have the barista want something totally different. Maybe they don't tip and the barista gets upset. Or maybe they want something that the barista doesn't have, or maybe the patron wants to ask the barista out but the barista's not interested. Take those mundane moments where you need your character to go somewhere or do something and make it interesting with conflict. Next to that, it's always a good idea to start your story grounded. Start it somewhere that everybody can relate to. For this one, everybody can relate to having their internet go out. In my short film, Would You Marry Me?, I did the same thing. I started with getting stuck in the snow. Anybody who lives in a somewhat colder climate can relate to this. One of the other keys to engaging an audience is by heightening reality, by taking a scenario that's frustrating and making it extremely frustrating, or taking something that's ridiculous and make it extremely over-the-top ridiculous. Regarding acting, I went completely over the top. I've never really had any acting classes or courses. I had one acting for animators class in film school where they taught us about moving characters and things like that. The biggest takeaway that I had was that acting is just putting yourself in the scenario and acting it out, just doing what you would do. You're not pretending to be somebody else, you're just going about it and then just pushing it to an extreme. And for me, that extreme is lots of yelling and screaming and anger and ridiculousness. Because I thought it was hilarious. The gist of the look came down to lighting. I used 3 different lamps that I had around and a couple of overhead lights. I used this lamp here. I used the lamp that I've got here. I've got a paper towel that's clipped to it to soften it a little bit. And then I used one other desk lamp that I have around. And for that, I always made sure that I had a nice rim light, a nice hair light. I had a nice key that was up and to the side, and then I also had a fill that I would put further back and further away. I used my CANON EOS-M with a 22mm lens. That equates to about a 35mm lens on a full-frame camera or a Super 35 camera. everything that you hear, everything that you see, use that as fuel. If you hear a funny conversation, write it down. If you have a funny conversation, write it down. If there's something that's so tragic that you just can't stop thinking about it, write it down so you remember it later and tell those stories. Go out, make your films, have fun. Don't be afraid to try and fail, because you'll do it a bunch. And every time it gets better. So, without further ado, here is an ode to CenturyLink. Come on. Connect. Come on! Give me the internet! F*** you, CenturyLink! 192.168.1.1. Enter!